Richard Fuller passed away on December 16th, 2024. And to the uncle of our superintendent of schools, Jeremy Smalline, his uncle Michael DelVecchio, who passed on 12/29/24 and whose funeral service was today. So if you could keep the Smalline, DelVecchio, Lees, and Fuller families in your thoughts and prayers, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we go with the agenda, we have several new faces at our table this evening and some older faces, nothing personal, Mr. Clelly. And so I'd like everybody to go around. We'll start with Mr. Clelly, and they'll tell us their title and introduce themselves to the community and to those in attendance.
Good evening, everyone. Romeo Kalili, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Administrative Services.
Gina Larson, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources.
Good evening, Mark Fleming, Deputy Superintendent.
Good evening, Lori Manhart, District Clerk.
Mike Zaffitz, Assistant Superintendent for Student Achievement and Educational Services.
Christine Baker, Assistant Superintendent for Achievement and Accountability.
Kelly Flagler, Assistant Superintendent for Student Achievement and Family and Community Engagement.
Jeremy Smalline, Superintendent.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome. So can we move can I move the agenda table, please? Moved by Ms. Moore, second by Mr. Stetzel. Any additions, corrections, collisions?
I'd like to add something to the agenda.
Sure.
A recommendation that the board joins NISMA, the New York State Association of School Board, or School Board Association, for $12,000 a year, providing legal representation also. Well, I'll just make the resolution
Okay.
that we join it. Okay.
Okay, perfect. All right, anything else? I'm going to remove 1.05, board recognition, and I'm going to remove student board member comments, 12.01. With that, all those in favor of the amended agenda? That passes 9-0. Moving on to GTA comments. Ms. Kara Managerovic? Managerovic, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Welcome.
My husband's fault. Mine was better. Sorry. But people that know me, it's true. Good evening. Happy New Year to you, Board of Education members, Superintendent Smalline. That's nice to say, huh? My name is Kara Manjerovic. I'm here representing the Greece Teachers Association as the unit's Vice President for Educational Programs. This is my 4th year in this role and have served our union in other capacities as a senior rep and also as a member of the Greece Teachers Community Programs with Terry Malore. I am the chair of the Policy Board as well as chair of Professional Learning Steering Committee, where integral collaboration between district and union occurs. Most importantly, I'm a first grade teacher at Autumn Lane. This is my 26th year, if you can believe it. One of my responsibilities is to help facilitate access to professional and continuous learning for our GTA members. What's most exciting about this is that GTA now have the opportunity to participate in choice professional learning. Greece teachers may choose up to 20 hours of professional learning. So this item in our contract allows instructional staff to access areas of specific interest and broaden their own learning to bring back to the students in their classroom. So some of the highlights that I highlighted this year were the GTA Women's Network Book Club, Introduction to Project-Based Learning, which I think is in cohort 2, ARC Core Unit Unpacking, Enhancing you're teaching with classroom, nonverbal communication, classroom management with Michael Grinder, which a bunch of teachers in this room took, and it was excellent. The most veteran teachers ever took that course. It was so good. Harnessing the power of AI to elevate student learning and engagement with Monica Burns, which I went to in Lake George. That was excellent. Cognitive coaching, developing self-directed leaders and learners, and a summer tech camp. So the Greece Professional Learning Center invites teachers to take advantage of all of these at no cost throughout the school year and beyond. They offer accessible, relevant, and impactful professional learning that can truly enhance teaching practices, using the latest in classroom research, collegial collaboration, and evidence-based practices. GCSD educators develop the skills that they need for their students and bring it back to the classroom while preparing them for the future. So you're all invited to go directly to the PL catalog, which is right on the professional learning tab in ClassLink. So you can see exactly what teachers would be offered as well. Marguerite Dimba, the Director of Professional Learning right here in this building, and I write a newsletter 3 times a year, which includes all of the PL information. And within this collaboration, we attended the Teacher Center Fall Forum in Lake George. So we engaged in the AI workshop with Monica Burns, and literally right at that workshop, she was like, you can create this with AI and this with AI for your classroom. And I wrote like a Jeopardy game about animal behavior. It was fantastic. So just some data, which I feel like is important. Greece teachers so far this year have completed 11,037 hours of professional learning. We have 6,143 hours that are currently in progress. Our Greece catalog alone, we have provided more than 578 PL offerings, and we currently have 9,936 registrants, because they can be from around the state or country, in those 578 professional learning courses. So it's really exciting for teachers. I feel like everyone's kind of hit their stride. This is a couple years in now, and so people are really getting interested in talking about all of the professional learning that's going on. So thank you for your time. Know that Greece teachers appreciate your continued effort and support on behalf of our students and ourselves. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Henley.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Henley, and I am the Vice President of GASA and the Assistant Director of Accountability for the district. So we're going to take a look at some of the things that are going on in the buildings so far this year, specifically around one of the 3 goals that we focused on this year, and that is the PLCs. The PLCs really are the foundation to everything that we do. It is where good instruction starts, but good instruction leads to increased achievement. So PLCs are very much related to that first goal, as well as the third goal, because good instruction leads to deeper student engagement, mitigating behavior issues in class. So PLCs really are the foundation. But the foundations of PLCs really is trust. Trust is important in this environment for folks to have what we call psychological safety. This creates an environment in which true professional collaboration can occur. Cross-pollination of best practices allows for teachers to learn from each other and feel the safety to try new things. So this is an example of what a PLC could do and what many of our buildings are working on right now. They look at questions, or they look at different exams that the students are taking, and they look and see what are the teachers' students doing on those exams. So teacher 1, as you can see, had a 46% proficiency rate on question 1, an 89 on 2, and a 92 on 3. So they need a little bit of assistance with question 1. So they can look to teachers 2 and 3 on that PLC, and they can say to them, what are you doing that's working so well? And this is where that trust comes in play, to be able to try new things and to learn from each other. Teachers 2 and 3 can learn from the other teachers as well, as you can see. So this is focusing on shifting from addressing learning gaps to addressing instructional gaps. But what we have here in all of our buildings are what we call guiding coalitions. And these guiding coalitions, being led by the principals of all of our buildings, are building the foundation of the PLC. All buildings are conducting needs assessments with staff to gather feedback on the current state of PLCs. They are visiting PLCs across the building to review the effectiveness using rubrics developed by Richard DeFore, and they're grounding themselves in Richard DeFore's text called Learning by Doing. This is the sacred text of the PLC. This is one example of one of our buildings using the work of that book. This is a question from that book. Our learning team has a process for giving and receiving critical feedback among team members. 50% of the group disagrees, but 50% of the group also agrees that we're ready to do this work now. So what this shows is that, yes, this is difficult work and it requires a lot of trust, but it shows that we're gaining that trust and that we're ready to do the work. The soil is fertile for this work. Our learning team takes actions based on the trends that we spot in student learning. We are, as you can see here, we are ready for this now, and we're already doing some of this work. So this is a different building that we got information from and did this survey. So the guiding coalitions are also receiving parallel professional learning on the 4DX model of execution and using this work to facilitate the PLC process by focusing on wildly important goals, acting on lead measures, keeping compelling scoreboards, and creating a cadence of accountability for all in this PLC work. And lastly, I wrote this down because I get emotional. On behalf of GASA, I would like to congratulate Superintendent Smalling and his cabinet as we enter this new year. You have surrounded yourself, sir, with the very best, and we are excited to serve under your leadership and look forward to where the future of Greece takes us. Now let's get to work, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Henley. All right, I don't think I have anybody from AgSopt, Gus, or Teamsters. All right, moving on to Residents Forum, we have one speaker, Mr. Smith. Welcome this evening.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for providing this residence forum for me to speak tonight. My name is Timothy Smith, and I am a 31-year resident of the Greece Central School District. I was a sergeant in the Army with a tour in Vietnam, and I'm a member of the American Legion Greece Post 468 and a member of the VFW Post 4658. I'm here today in support of all veterans in the school district. Pursuant to the expanded 2013 New York Real Property Tax Law, Section 458-A, I am petitioning the Greece Central School District Board of Education to provide the exemption on school taxes to all qualified veterans residing in the Greece Central School District. The exemptions would follow the identical veteran tax exemption guidelines as outlined by the New York State Monroe County for county and town taxes, and I've included them in the handouts. I'm also requesting the board to put this petition on the agenda for a public meeting to resolve with a subsequent vote of yes. These school exemptions will definitely help many veterans on fixed incomes, those with disabilities, and also their surviving spouses. In Monroe County, the school districts of the City of Rochester, Gates-Chili, Caledonia-Mumford, Brockport, and also a large number of school districts across the state already provide these veteran exemptions. The financial impact on the non-veteran property owners would be negligible. Approximately 3,700 veterans reside in the Greece Central School District, including about 27 combat veterans. A school tax exemption for these veterans would impact the $125 million in school property taxes collected in 2024, burdened by less than 2%. Surely not all 37 veterans are property tax owners. The information I get is probably half. There should be no need to raise school property taxes to cover any loss of revenue caused by a veteran school tax exemption. The district has the money with $28 million net excess that already exists in the 2024 budget, which grew from $20 million excess in the 2023 budget after a $3 million property tax increase. The Greece Central School District is the second largest school district in Monroe County with approximately 11,000 students. Every year, some of these students will go out and serve in the military and return to be a part of the Greece community. Let's really mean thank you for your service and provide all present and future veteran school tax exemptions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. That concludes our residents' forum. Moving on to staffing, and I saw you move staffing to the table, please. Moved by Vice President Farmer, seconded by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on staffing? Seeing none, all is in favor. That passes 9-0. Assistant Superintendent Larson.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased this evening to welcome a few new administrators. First, let's start with our new principal for Athena High School, Jason Fulkerson. Everybody's favorite part. Thank you, Jason. Jason earned his undergraduate degree from St. Bonaventure University before pursuing his master's in administrative certification from SUNY Brockport. Jason comes to this position with tremendous experience. He has been the principal at Athena Middle School for the past 11 years, but before that, he taught in Rochester City School District for 7 years and went on to become an assistant principal in the Rochester City School District for 10 years. Jason's favorite part of the job is being part of a school team that works hard to create and sustain a positive school environment where students, staff, families, and the Greece community can take pride. Jason is looking forward to leading Athena High School and being part of a larger system within Greece Central, one that looks for constant improvement while exploring ways to make our school campuses a positive place for all stakeholders. Outside of work, Jason is a proud father and husband. He enjoys spending time with his family and going to support them in their activities outside of the school day. Jason's leadership style is through the lens of a parent. When working with students and staff, he strives to make the school experience a standard that he would want his own children to be part of and his wife to teach in. Congratulations, Jason.
Mr. Fulkerson, you're not going to get away without pictures. So we got to do a picture with Superintendent Smallene, Deputy Fleming, and Assistant Superintendent Zaffis.
Next, I would like to welcome our new principal of Patty Hill Elementary School, Shayna Valerio. Shayna received her bachelor's degree in elementary education from Robert Morris University in Pittsburgh, PA. She earned her first master's degree in literacy from Nazareth College and earned her educational leadership degree from the Rochester City School District's Rock Urban Leadership Program through Bank Street College. This unique leadership program was designed to build equity-centered transformational leaders. Shayna began her career in the Rochester City School District as an elementary school teacher, teaching grades 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. She then became an instructional coach in math and reading interventionist. Shayna joined the Greece Central School District in 2021 as an assistant principal at Autumn Lane, and last year became the acting principal. Shayna's favorite part of her job is the relationships that she has built with the staff, students, and families in the Greece community. She also cherishes the time she spent working alongside Principal Mr. Michael Ferris, in which she learned and grew as a leader. Shayna is honored to build on the tradition of academic excellence at Patty Hill and looks forward to continuing the great work already in progress, developing our learners into leaders. Shayna is deeply committed to fostering strong relationships with students, staff, and families. She is honored to be the newest Patty Hill Bulldog. Shayna grew up in Greece and lives in Chile with her husband James and 2 children, Jimmy, 9, and Maria, 6. She played Division I soccer in college and now enjoys watching her children's sporting events and musical concerts. Shayna loves to cook and to spend time with her big Italian family. Congratulations, Shayna.
Congratulations, Shayna. Picture time. Flagler, you're it. family, sorry. I forgot the whole family. Fulkerson threw me off with no family here. Bring them all up, everybody. Yo, absolutely, he loves me.
All right, and last this evening, please welcome our new Assistant Director of Student Services, Kate DiGregorio. Kate earned her undergraduate degree from Nazareth College before pursuing her Master of Social Work from the University at Buffalo and a Certificate of Advanced Study in K-12 Leadership from the University of Rochester. Her experience spans a range of settings, including a day treatment program, in-home supports, a mental health outpatient clinic, and a psychiatric emergency room. Kate was employed at Hillside Family of Agencies and the University of Rochester prior to joining Greece Central in 2015. Kate's favorite part of the job is building relationships with students and colleagues and combining mental health and educational interventions to empower students to reach their potential. She enjoys working with others to identify innovative solutions to help support student success and witnessing individual and team growth. Kate is looking forward to collaborating with others to identify and implement best practices that will reduce barriers to student success. Outside of work, Kate enjoys spending time with family and friends and being active outdoors. She enjoys gardening, cooking meals, and canning the vegetables grown, and using her artistic side in various home projects. She is excited to begin this new role supporting the multitude of individuals and departments that encompass student services. Congratulations, Kate.
Yep, picture time, Zaffets, so that's where you. Congratulations to all our new hires in their new positions. Moving on to tenure 2.02, can I suddenly move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Stetzel, second by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to GTA MOA additional FTEs, can I suddenly move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Butler, seconded by Mr. Maloney. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to separation agreement 2.04. Can I suddenly move that to the table? Moved by Ms. Moore, seconded by Vice President Farmer. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? Seeing none, our whole audience is leaving.
Separation.
Yeah, separation, it's over. All those in favor? That passes 9-0. And moving on to the frontline individual contract, can I somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Setzel, second by Ms. Farrar. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That, oh. All right, before we vote, sorry, Mr. Maloney.
Is this a one-year agreement, or is this a total agreement, this contract?
1 year.
It's just 1 year? Okay.
Any other questions? All right, with that, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to presentations 4.01, Superintendent Entry Plan, Superintendent Smallene.
Good evening. So I know the board had an opportunity to hear my entry plan, but I wanted to have the opportunity to share with public today. So I apologize that you have to hear it twice. It's their abridged version of it. So I'd like to start by share with everybody the honor it is to stand before you today as we embark on this exciting journey together. Since joining Greece Central School District in 2005, I've had the privilege of serving this community in various roles. Today, my commitment remains rooted in fostering trust, collaboration, and transparency. This entry plan, which I'll share with you today, is designed to guide my first 6 months in this role. It focuses on understanding the strengths, the challenges, and the opportunities within our district while engaging with all stakeholders, board members, students, staff, families, and the wider community to ensure we align our efforts with the goals of our REACH 2027 strategic plan. My entry plan is structured into 3 distinct phases to ensure a thorough and thoughtful transition. It's designed to provide a clear roadmap for my first 6 months as superintendent, focusing on collaboration, understanding, and planning. Phase 1, the listening phase, is committed to listening and focuses on building or strengthening relationships and trust with the Board of Education, staff, students, families, and the community. Phase 2, or the learn phase, I will continue to engage with stakeholders to deepen my understanding of the district's strengths and challenges as we begin to synthesize feedback and identify priorities to align with the district's REACH 2027 strategic plan. And finally, Phase 3, the lead phase, will be the development of a comprehensive action plan to guide the 2025-26 school year. The plan will be collaborative, data-driven, and aligned with stakeholder feedback. My hope is that this plan reflects my commitment to listening, learning, and leading with transparency. It ensures our path forward is rooted in shared values and aspirations. I identified 4 goals for my transition into superintendent. The first, develop a trusting, collaborative, and transparent relationship with the Board of Education. I believe building trust with the board is foundational to effective governance and leadership. Transparency will be key as we work together to prioritize the district's needs and make informed decisions. Next, fostering and strengthening positive relationships across the district. This includes students, teachers, staff, administrators, parents, and community members. Strong relationships are the cornerstone of a healthy and thriving school district. Next, understand the district's strengths, challenges, and opportunities. A comprehensive understanding of what makes Greece unique is vital to building on its successes and addressing its challenges. This goal ensures that decisions are data-driven and tailored to the district's specific needs. And finally, gain insight into safety, climate, and district needs. Evaluating safety and climate is critical to fostering an environment where students and staff feel secure and supported. This goal ties directly into creating systems that support the entire district and help drive long-term success. These goals reflect my commitment to listening, learning, and leading in collaboration with all stakeholders to create a positive and sustainable future for the Greece Central School District. So over the next 6 months, I plan on visiting every school and department. These visits will provide me a deeper understanding of the culture, the strengths and challenges of each school and department. I will engage directly with key stakeholders through individual or small group discussions, including students, to hear their voices and understand their experiences, with parents to gain insight into their priorities and their concerns, and community members to foster a shared vision for the district's future. I will actively engage with the community by attending school and district events, community meetings, parent exchanges to strengthen ties and ensure open communication channels. And finally, we are in the process of finalizing a thought exchange survey to solicit input from a diverse range of stakeholders, including the students, staff, parents, and community organizations. This survey will go out to all stakeholders within the next couple weeks. These actions are not just about gathering information. It's about forming the partnerships and building the trust that will help guide our work together in the months and years ahead. And finally, Phase 3. The goal of Phase 3 is creating a clear, actionable plan to guide the district's work in the coming school year. This phase represents the culmination of the listening, learning, and relationship-building efforts of the first 2 phases. Together, we will use this foundation to create a brighter, more equitable future for the district. Any questions?
Thank you, Superintendent Smalley.
Thank you.
Before we go to our next presentation, I just want to introduce a special guest we have here this evening. Regent Hale from the State Board of Regents is here this evening. Thank you, Regent Hale, for attending. Moving on to 4.02, E&L, dual language presentation. Superintendent Smalley. I almost called you Grauman.
All right, I'd like to call on Mrs. Sweet for this presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shauna Sweet. I am the Director of the Department of Multilingual Education. Happy to be here to talk about our bilingual program and share some updates for this year. So firstly, just going back to our commitment statement from our strategic plan and thinking about how bilingual education really connects with the work that we're doing in Greece. So we have made a commitment in this district to adopt curriculum that provides culturally authentic learning experiences that mirror students' diverse identities and ways of understanding, communicating, demonstrating curiosity and knowledge. And we'll highlight a little bit about how the bilingual program works in service of this. So what's our evidence of success? So we're really thinking about how are we tapping into our students' assets, such as sharing traditions, cultural assets with staff to support integration of these values in the curriculum, as well as engaging in activities that improve school climate and culture for students of diverse backgrounds. So this trajectory map might look familiar if you saw the presentation last year, but just to get everybody on the same page, I'll just go back in time and talk a little bit about the history of our bilingual program in Greece. So we did have a dual language bilingual program in Greece from 2008 to 2017. At the time, it was a forward-thinking idea. And the program existed at English Village in Lakeshore, and at the time it was paused due to the fact that signature schools were going away, and there was an idea that students were going to be placed in their home schools. Fast forward to 2021, a new program proposal was put into place to reestablish the program with a gradual implementation. So our bilingual program advisory committee convened in 2022 and made a lot of recommendations regarding program logistics, statistics and curriculum. So this year, I'm proud to say, we have our first year of implementation. So we have our first cohort of kindergartners who have begun class at English Village this fall. And the goal is to increase the program one grade level at a time. So the plan is for next year, there will be 2 classes of kindergarten and 2 classes of first grade, and so on, to be scaling up 1 grade level per year. So it's important to really think about who our students are here in Greece. So we have almost 20% of students in our district, and families are Hispanic and Latino, and that's how they identify. So that's actually the highest subpopulation of ethnicity after white, which is 50%. So we have a significant population of students who are Hispanic and Latino. So what do the regulations say about bilingual education? So Commissioner's Regulation, Part 154, which guides education for English language learners, requires schools or districts to establish a new bilingual education program if 20 or more students who are English language learners speak the same language at the same grade level, and that's across the district. So if we have 20 students in any grade level that speak the same language, we are required by New York State to implement bilingual education. And I did link some documents there. So where are we at in Greece? So taking a look at our kindergarten subgroup, which is where we've started our program, we actually have 19 students who are English language learners and speak Spanish at home. So we didn't quite hit the 20 mark, but you know, we have new students enrolling every day, so we could certainly hit 20 this year. But I think this is a great way to show how our English language learners who speak Spanish are spread across the grade levels. Some grade levels have more than others, but it's important really to be thinking about the fact that we are right at the place where New York State would require us to have bilingual education. So what we are doing as a district is being proactive and trying to really think about quality implementation before something is required of us. So, and this is also a recommendation from the State Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages that we are being forward-thinking with our planning. So besides the fact that there are some requirements, there are a lot of benefits to bilingual education. So the benefits connect directly to our strategic plan by igniting learning, cultivating trust, and expanding opportunity. So studies have shown that students in bilingual programs perform better on reading and math assessments. They develop greater understanding of language structures, which is correlated to enhanced reading skills. Research has shown that schools that have implemented bilingual programs have created an avenue for parents who are multilingual learners' primary advocates to engage in their children's education, which leads to improved attitudes about learning and higher academic achievement. So we are more culturally responsive by implementing bilingual education. And I'll share, there's a link here that New York State has just put out this year, some guiding principles in education for bilingual education. So there's some briefs along with a glossary. And another thing I'm proud to share is that New York State was just highlighted at a national level. There was actually a national bilingual education guiding document that came out about 2 weeks ago, and New York State was highlighted for the way that we implement bilingual education in the state. So what does our model look like? So here in Greece, we have a program model called dual language. It's also called two-way bilingual education. So that means that there are students from 2 different language backgrounds who participate in the program together. So some students come from homes where they predominantly speak English or only English. Some students come from homes who maybe speak Spanish or a mix of Spanish and English. And the goal is for all students to equally become bilingual, biliterate, bicultural, all while improving their academic achievement. So these are what the students look like in our program this year. This year, we have 40 students who enrolled in the bilingual program at English Village across both kindergarten classes. So out of those 40 students, 17 of them are students who use Spanish at home as primary or heritage speakers. So their parents identified on their home language survey that they spoke Spanish. And out of those 17 students, 10 of them were identified as English language learners. So we have a nice representation of students who primarily speak English at home. Almost half the students have some Spanish at home, and 10 of the students probably have stronger Spanish, so they were identified as English language learners. So we have a nice mix of both. And this is what a typical day looks like in our bilingual program. So as you can see, one of the theories of bilingual education is to strategically use colors to identify the work that you're doing in different languages. So blue is for English, red is for Spanish, and purple is for things that are done in both languages. So we have 2 classrooms of bilingual education, of the bilingual program. So for example, on one day, the class will have the first part of their ARC core lesson in Spanish, followed by a little bit of math, and then they have the second part of their ARC core lesson in English. They have specials, and then they do reading lab, or what I need, win time, based on what their languages are and what they need the most. So it's a mix of both languages there. And then the other class is getting the same thing in the alternate language, and they switch on a daily basis. And one thing I'd like to share is that this particular schedule was developed in conjunction, so we've worked very closely with American Reading Company to develop this schedule based on what American Reading Company supports and their expertise for bilingual education. Oh, sorry, I may not be able to watch it. Oh, my apologies. Well, I know, I'm not really quite sure how that happened. Well, it looks like it's there. So I can share the link, and in fact, I would love to be able to share this with other people. So we actually have a YouTube page for the bilingual program. So we have a language and culture coach who supports Spanish instruction. She works side by side with both teachers, including the Spanish language arts teacher, and she provides a lot of support to the bilingual program. So the video that I was hoping to show you actually highlights a lesson where the students are completely engaged in Spanish, and even though more than half of them are predominantly English speakers at home, they're able to pick up the Spanish within a couple of months of school. So she's giving them directions based on animal sounds, and they're able to do it. And what's exciting about this is that the way language is learned, students or anybody actually learns language receptively first. So they take in what they hear. And in this video, which I'm hoping to show you soon, you will be able to see the students really engaging in Spanish like right away, and it's the opposite for English. Following another thing on the YouTube channel is direct instruction with how to support Spanish literacy at home and information to parents that's shared in Spanish. So it's really neat, and I'll make sure that you all have access to that link. So what's new? What do we have going on this year? We have been provided with funding for an instructional leadership network. So every department has a group of instructional leaders who meet with district office staff and be able to plan and support instruction. So we've been able to launch that this year to really get a handle on communication and planning for the bilingual program. As I mentioned, we have regular coaching. American Reading Company Stephanie has provided us with a bilingual coach who actually is a former principal of a dual language school. She's incredibly knowledgeable, and we're really benefiting from the regular meetings with her. We have a TOSA, so a teacher on special assignment to support world languages and bilingual education. And the great part about this is that she supports Spanish at the very top levels. So really thinking about the trajectory of our students from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade and how they're going to be able to develop their bilingualism throughout. Again, I mentioned we have a language and culture coach who supports Spanish language arts and family engagement. We have some assessments. So some of you might be familiar with the NICES lot, which is a test for English language learners. Well, the pre-LOS is sort of a similar test for early childhood, and it enables us to get foundational literacy and oral language assessments for all students in both languages so we can monitor their growth. We have a Latino family program that right now is targeting kindergarten, but we'll begin in the spring with our pre-K students for recruitment, and that meets on Thursday evenings, so that's a really great event. And another really exciting thing is our program commitments. So our bilingual advisory committee had worked for a whole year to collaborate and co-develop our commitments for bilingual education. We actually used the Greece strategic plan, the guiding principles for dual language, and combined them with the feedback from the school and the district to develop our commitments. And so our commitment 1 is the value of bilingualism, biliteracy, and biculturalism. Commitment 2 is expectation for student achievement and preparation for the future. And commitment 3 is being community-oriented and involving the community, parents, and families in the program. And Laurel's office was able to work with us to create these beautiful graphics. So I'm happy to share that we'll be able to have that poster size up at English Village in both languages this week. So I know the print shop's working on them right now. So what's next? So what next is really planning for implementation for first grade. Jason, Rosa, I, and myself, Ashley, I give a shout out to my team. We've been working on this already with thinking about what the scale up will look like next year. Our bilingual program advisory committee will be meeting soon to really talk about some of the planning and take a look at some of the feedback and things that we want to look forward to next year. Recruitment, so for our incoming kindergarten, as I mentioned, we'll offer our Latino family program in the spring. And really thinking about how the loss links, which is that pre-loss assessment scaled up, because we want to be able to measure students' literacy and language skills in English and Spanish every year. Hopefully biliteracy pathway awards, so students are able to be encouraged and feel the value of becoming biliterate from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and working on school visits. So we're also working a lot with districts from around the state, Buffalo, a lot from the Hudson Valley and Long Island. So we're planning some inter-school visits, whether they be virtual or in person, is yet to come. So that's a lot of information, I'm sure. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there's anything that I can address right now.
Mr. Butler.
Thank you for the presentation. I am fortunate to have English Village as one of my liaison schools, and so Principal Lewis gave me a tour, and I got to go into those 2 kindergarten classes, and it was so cool to see these students learning in Spanish and in English. So real kudos to the team that are doing that work every single day, and to the district for investing in this. It's a real point of pride for us, I think, as a district. One of the things I'm interested in is the increased achievement that's talked about as one of the justifications for doing this. And I know we're only a year into this iteration again, and I just wonder if you could share a little bit of what you'll be on the lookout for to demonstrate some increased achievement by students through participation in a bilingual program.
Yeah. So we do have multiple data points. So just like everybody's familiar with the ERLA, we have the ERLA that is being done in the bilingual program. There's also the ENEAL, which is the Spanish version of the ERLA that's done at different times. So January is a benchmark month for that and for iReady. So our students are able to access all of the math materials, including assessments in Spanish. So we'll be looking forward to those benchmarks sometime after this month. I'll be working with Todd on that. We also have the pre-loss, so that's like the oral language and the pre-literacy. So we're planning to do another assessment in the spring just to measure students' language growth of how they're able to communicate in both languages. But research shows with bilingual education that, overall bilingual education has a positive impact, but typical students accelerate at third grade and beyond. So that's when you really start to see that the more time on language instruction, that metacognition or that deep understanding of language typically happens third grade and beyond. I know last year when I presented, I showed a chart that was like 30 years of bilingual education research. I can share that again, but it's third grade where you really start to see the impacts.
That's great, thank you. So we'll hope to see a bump a couple years from now with this cohort then.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, we'll have the regular benchmark data.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mr. Bonagoro.
Thank you, Shauna. Nice to see you here again. I want to just dig into, on page 11, you have the color-coded chart. And I just want to dig into that a little bit and understand it a little bit better. So there's kind of a back and forth or maybe a in tandem interplay between English and Spanish going on. Oral languages, the languages that we speak and that we learn typically as children, we learn them before we go to school typically. It's called biologically primary. And it's different than learning a written language. So, and I know we've struggled with that for quite a while, not just in our district, but all over. So we have different rules, phonological rules, for example, between English and Spanish. Are we trying to teach both at the same time, or are we, like with our core, are we using like a two-language version of it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how does all that work?
Yeah. So.
That's a simple answer,
Yeah.
right?
One thing I can say is ARC Core as a curriculum is incredibly beneficial for the bilingual program. So way back in 2007, we had an English curriculum and we're recreating everything, right, for Spanish. ARC Core, it's kind of the envy of the other bilingual program administrators that we use that because the entire curriculum is available in both languages. So you see students, they're actually engaging in the same texts in both languages. And according to the phonics, like you mentioned, or the phonemic awareness, ARC Core promotes and supports us teaching language how it's learned naturally. So in Spanish, for example, you start with the vowels, where English you start with the consonants. And all of that is very well mapped out, and they've even identified where there's some overlap. So for example, the letter B, you don't really have to teach that you don't have to focus on that very deeply in both languages because the sound is the same in both languages. Where, the letter Y is different in both languages. So strategically, there's a plan for how that will be covered in English and how that will be covered in Spanish language arts.
So we're not just expecting kids to absorb this. We are directly teaching them, showing them how to do it in English and in Spanish. And I'm speaking particularly of the literate parts, the
Yes.
writing and the reading.
Yes, exactly.
Any other questions? Mr. Bonagoro.
So then in math, and that's a third language now. You've got reading, writing, or English, Spanish, and math. And then it's more conceptual. And And we're able to, and there too, our kids have struggled, but we're able to do that, integrate two different languages simultaneously.
Yeah. And the math classes, I showed you it was purple. Initially, we were going to have a very clear definition of languages for math, but what we ended up doing is what works best for the teachers and the students. I think the main lessons are primarily in English, and they break off. So they start whole group, they're kindergartners, they work into small groups. So this group of students who really needs this type of foundational math, maybe they're primarily Spanish speakers at home, so they'll get some targeted interventions with the bilingual Spanish teacher on exactly what they need. So they start out whole group working together, and then they're trying to now divide students based on what they need specific to math.
So I'm hearing that we have direct supports in their maybe primary language.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Shauna.
Okay, thank you very much.
4.03, reserve funds presentation, Superintendent Smalley.
I'm going to ask Romeo Colilli to come up and present. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Tonight, we're going to speak a lot of bit, regarding our reserve funds. So what we're going to review tonight is what our reserve fund balance was as of June of '24, when we ended the '23-24 school year. And I will say up front, we've continued to have a strong reserve balance and a strong reserve contribution as of last year, primarily due to a couple things that I want to just keep pointing out. One is with the state implementing the foundation aid formula implementation, we received base foundation aid significant increases over a 3-year period. And two, at the same time that came out, we received federal grant dollars, ARP funds, and some other federal dollars that we spent a lot of time talking about and figuring out how we can strategically use those funds to, one, fully utilize the funds, and two, offset some of the expenses where we could and properly do it, and where it's eligible from from our operating budget. So fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how I guess you could look at this, it's resulted in further additions into our reserve plans that we want to, our reserve funds, which we want to review with everybody this evening. So use of the reserves, basically, it's a mechanism for legally saving funds for future use. Some of the ways that we can use the funds are listed here: reducing long-term borrowing costs. We basically do that when we do our capital projects or bus purchases. We pull from the capital or bus reserve in order to pay for the local share so that the residents don't have to have additional expenses added to the levy. We also use it for any fluctuation in tax rate, mid-year budget cuts, or another big advantage is for emergency projects. Although the finance office is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the finances of the district, the Board of Education is responsible for appropriately managing the financial affairs. So that's why we come to the board each year and throughout the year and try to explain where we are and why we're doing things. Only the board has the authority to transfer to voter or board-approved reserves, and only the board can appropriate fund balance for the tax levy for the ensuing year. And then we try to make that clear with the board when we come back in August each year with our fund balance recommendations on where we'd like to place the fund. But again, it's up to the board to make those decisions. So reserve balances also have, and this might not be something that everybody knows, but they do have an impact on, a direct impact on our borrowing. Well, in this district, we have capital projects going on every year. I've been here 15 years. Our senior architect's been here 20. There's capital projects every year. We issue debt every year. We pay off debt every year. One of the critical factors is our Moody's score, and a favorable and a positive or a strong Moody's rating gives us better rates. And what you see on the district are some of the positive comments, or on the slide is some of the positive comments that were in the Moody's report from September of '23, and then some of the credit strengths that they also list in that same report. So why does that make a difference? So I asked our financial consultants, can you give me a couple, kind of quantify what this means? And I was able to get that. So back in June of '21, we issued $26 million in serial bonds. Our credit rating is AA3, which is a good credit rating. And what they did is they compared that to similar sized bonds in June of '21 with an entity that had a lower credit rating of an A, and see what that difference was. For that $26 million bond, there was about a 15 basis point difference in the rate. Well, what does that translate to? It translates that we were able to get roughly the same funds for $355,000 less in interest costs over the life of those serial bonds than somebody who was rated an A, because we're an AA3. In June of '22, we issued another $31 million. We were able, again, rating that against a credit rating of A versus our AA3, difference was about 21 basis points, which translates into about $550,000 less in interest costs to us because of our credit rating, which directly is a result of what we have, not only in our reserve, but how we manage things as well. That's just over $900,000 in interest costs for those two issuances. We have a $17 million serial bond planned for June of '25, and we're expecting that we're going to get favorable rates as well. So it makes a difference. It's just not an item that is visible to everybody out there, but it does make a difference for us in the finance office. The next slide here just shows you where we are as an AA3 and where that compares. Non-investment grades are on the bottom. You move up the chain, you got lower medium, upper medium. We're in the high grade range. And you can see a couple notes there. New York State is rated in A1. We're rated in AA3. Monroe County is in A1. City of Rochester is in A1. Town of Greece is in A2. I'm sorry. So we're in good company, and we're in a good place with our rating. It's very strong, and it's been there, and we would like to keep it there going forward. So as we look at our funds this current year, June '24 to June of '23, you'll see the balances in all the different reserves. Most have gone up, some have come down. At the bottom line, our reserve balance, when you include not only the restricted reserves, which are above, but when you include the appropriated fund balance and the undesignated fund balance, we're up about $28 million in our reserve funds. And then as we look at some of the other non-general fund, look at food service. Food services fund balance went down by about $181,000. We were hoping that that would come down further, but they did spend roughly $1.3 million. But because we're all community eligible programs for food service, and the state was making up the difference between the federal rate and what we would normally get, it closed that gap. So we got increased revenues on top of our increased expenditures. So our net change in fund balance was only $181,000, but it's still a balance of 2.8. Now, in the past, if you recall in some of the management letters, our food service department would get cited for having too much fund balance as relation to the number of months for operating expenses. And then we would devise a plan to spend that down. The state finally has changed that from a 3-month balance to a 6-month balance. So that helps us, even at a balance of 2.8, we aren't anywhere near being over the compliance threshold any longer, because they finally made the change from 3 months to 6 months of expenses. In the capital fund for '24, you see some negative numbers there. That's only due to timing. When we issue our bonds in July or June of this year, those negatives will go away. Those balances are there because they're only temporary financing mechanisms. And for debt service, went down about $650,000. We used that debt service fund to keep our tax exclusion at that $2.7 million level when we do the tax cap calculations. Looking at our appropriated fund balance, this is the money that we would take out of the current year's surplus and apply it towards the next year's levy. You can see in past years, we've done that to the tune of $7 or $6 million. Starting in '22, when we started to get the foundation aid increase, the first thing we started to do was to not appropriate fund balance for the tax levy any longer. So in '22, '23, and '23, '24, we were at zero. You see 24, 25, we did appropriate $2 million, but it wasn't to apply towards the tax levy. That was to do the playgrounds and the outdoor pavilions. So we're still basically at zero for the tax levy, which is a good place to be. Unappropriated fund balance history, you can see 5 years here. This is the rainy day fund. It's capped at 4%. We're at 4% each year for the last 10 or 12 years. As we look more at our reserve funds, I won't spend a ton of time on this, but workers' comp, we're self-insured. It's I've talked about this before, it's a flexible reserve, so we have intentionally placed funds in here similar to our unemployment reserve because it gives us the most opportunity to move those funds to another reserve or to use them in a different manner than any of the other reserves. And I'll speak to that closer to the end of the presentation. But we have a balance of $27.8 million. And if we wanted to transfer these funds, we would just need board authorization to do it, and we need to do it within 60 days of the end of the school year. So we have some flexibility there. Similarly, our unemployment reserve has a good balance of $21.6 million in it. There's no limit on this reserve, similar to the workers' comp reserve. It's flexible, similar to the workers' comp reserve, and again, a 60-day rule to move those funds as we need them. Our insurance reserve, this is to cover student claims, deductibles, and we've put money in here to cover ourselves adequately for any Child Victim Act claims that may arise on us and for any cyber breaches that we may see. One item that I've noted is reading some literature over the last few months that in 2024, the average breach for cyber cost entities about $5 million as a result of being breached on cyber. So we wanted to make sure that although we do have some insurance coverage with NYSER, our insurance broker, we have some additional funds there to cover things for at least a breach should we need it. So that's why we've beefed up this reserve to $9 million. And if we don't need it going forward, we can always do something with it with the approval of the board. Our tax certiorari reserve, this is the reserve that we established in order to pay for those claims where organizations, companies are challenging their assessments and the amount of taxes they pay. They file a tax certiorari claim against the district. We follow a fixed methodology, which we've been using for the last 15 or 20 years. This seems to work out well for us. The balance in this account has been stable. We believe it's adequate. And just as a note, the trend has been coming down since about 2021. Last year, we had 28 owner claims compared to 35 the year before. So in 23, the number came down. And in previous year ago, the claims, our exposure was about 7.1 million. Now it's about 5.2 million. So we're seeing a downward trend on that, and that's why you see the balance go down to 1.8. 2 years ago, it was about $3.2 million. Our liability reserve is limited to 3% of our budget, which is somewhere around $9.2 million. We're currently at about 8.7, which is about 95% of the limit. And this is used to cover liability losses when the court orders it, or to help us with any 3020A or Section 75 claims. Our ERS reserve is the Employee Retirement System Reserve. We have a balance of $29.3 million there. The current rate for this current year is about 15.2%. We're expecting that to go to about 16.5% for 25-26. Our ERS bill is about $4 to $4.5 million a year. This covers about 6 or 7 years of paying that bill. If we needed to do it in the operating budget, we could draw funds from here and use it in the operating budget, or if we needed it in the teacher reserve, we can move monies between this and the teacher reserve as well. In the teacher reserve, we have about $9.8 million. This is capped at a contribution of 2% a year, and to a max of 10% of the certified administrative salaries from the previous year. We're pretty much at the cap. So for 24, 25, you will probably not see any request to put any funds into the TRS reserve because we're at the cap. Our building reserve, this is our capital fund reserve. You'll see the balance there is $10.7 million. Most of that will go away. $10.3 million will go away, or $10.4 million will go away with Level Up when we move those funds out of the reserve and into the capital budget to pay the local share of the recent Level Up capital project. We are going to need a new capital building reserve established. And whether we do that for this upcoming May or the following May, we still have to make some decisions on. But I bring that up because I will touch on that closer to the end of the presentation. Similarly, we have a bus reserve. We use this reserve to pay that local share of bus purchases. So if when we get 5 years state aid back on our bus purchases at about 80%, it leaves a gap. We use this to fill that gap so that there's no local expense added to the levy. And again, this reserve is down to $4.7 million. It is maxed out. We're going to need another bus reserve established as well. And then in total, just summing it all up over the time period on the slide, we've deposited about $170 million, $171 million into all these reserves. We've earned interest to about $6 million. We've pulled out or utilized $53 million, which leaves us a balance of about $123.5 million in our reserves, our restricted reserves at this point in time. And then finally, this is just similar to one of the first slides, but it shows you if you're looking at our financial statements and you're looking to see where all these are, they're listed in the items in blue, total up to the balance of the $123.5 million. So at this point, I did want to add a couple notes that I didn't put in the presentation, but I wasn't sure how to do this yet, but I'll speak to it for a couple minutes. One point is, although the balances have been increasing over the years, we are not out of compliance with any of the reserves as far as legal compliance goes. Those reserves that have no limits on them, we have increased. Those that have caps, we have stopped. And those that were approaching any type of cap, it's on our radar, and we'll make sure that that gets capped out and stopped. And that's probably coming up at the end of the current year. We know our workers' comp, the reserve, and our unemployment reserve have higher balances than some of the other reserves. But again, that was intentional because it's flexible, and we've got some thoughts on how to move those funds and where we're going to need that. I'll speak to that in a minute. Our bus reserve and our building capital reserve, they're low compared to what we need. We're going to be, we've probably got 3 or 4 years of bus reserve right now in left and maybe in zero in capital. And as we develop those plans, we'll bring them back to the board in a more formal basis. So just some thoughts on what we're thinking we want to do with the reserves. One, as we build out our budgets, if we need to pull reserves into the operating budget, we can go to the board, request transfers from the reserves to be used in our 25, 26, 26, 27 future budgets as we need. That's always going to be the case. A couple other things that we're thinking, and it probably likely that we'll end up having to do. One is the capital reserve, the capital building reserve. We don't have a balance in there. We need a new reserve that is going to require voter approval to establish the reserve. And there are two things we got to start, we have been considering for capital. One is the remaining work in the buildings and throughout the district after level up capital project. So we did a walkthrough of all the buildings. There was like $125 million worth of work identified in the buildings, plus we had the building condition survey to have to deal with and level up. We had to take a mix of both of those, and we couldn't do a lot of the work that needed to be done in the buildings. We are still having that work costed out, and we'll know how much we're going to estimate what that is. And we'll need a local share contribution into that reserve in order to make it a zero additional cost to our residents. What complicates it a little bit is the possibility of the electric bus mandate. So if we have to start moving forward with the electric bus mandate, it's going to require two pieces: purchase of the buses and infrastructure work that will be considered capital work. When we go out to residents to ask for the establishment of this new capital reserve, we still got to decide how much is going to be for building, how much could be for infrastructure for electric buses, but the electric bus piece, we still don't really know how that's going to work, so I'm not sure where to do that. But assuming that was approved, we would then take and come back to the board and ask for a transfer from the workers' comp and/or the unemployment reserve right into that newly established capital building and EV bus reserve to make sure the funds are there to make it zero cost as we go forward whenever we have to start to do that. Okay? Secondly, and that could be in our planning, we're thinking if we have to do if we're going to do $25 million capital project for the buildings plus BCS work that we're going to have to do for next year, we may need $25, $30 million to cover the local share there, and we may need $20 million to cover the start of the electric bus. So we may come out with $45 million reserve and then transfer a good portion of those funds out of unemployment and workers' comp, get it into that reserve so we know when we have to start moving on it, we've got our residents covered for the local share. We don't need to add it to the tax base. Similarly, for the electric bus, we need to establish a bus reserve. But our new bus reserve, we can't buy gas buses after January of 2027. Now, we've planned out that we're going to hold off on any bus purchases for 1 or 2 years, but if things don't change at the state level and they still hold us to the January 1st of 2027, we can go probably 1.5 years, but then we're going to need to start thinking about buying an electric bus. We're going to need that local share in the reserve so that it doesn't cost our residents any local piece or additional burden on the tax levy, at least in the short term. And the problem is, or the caution is, we don't know where this electric bus mandate is going to go as of today. Some will say that it will change. Others will say you got to do it. There's other issues in between both those, and it's hard for a district our size to make any movement on that. And I would like to really kind of hold back until, I don't want to start moving down the road until we know what the road is. I don't want to be a third, quarter or a third down the road and it changes. And then we've kind of caused a problem for ourselves. So again, I know there's a lot in the reserves, but those are the three items that we're going to work on figuring out how to use a good portion of that balance. We'll bring down, it'll keep the balance the same, but unemployment and workers' comp will be significantly lower than what it currently is. Hope that helps.
Mr. Bowler?
Thank you. Thanks, Romeo, for the presentation. And thanks for, excuse me, the insight around feeling like we're not overfunded in a lot of areas. A couple that you mentioned where we're a little bit light. And that leads me to one of my questions, which is, I'm sure, something you can explain to me, but you mentioned that we have a building reserve fund now that's going to be depleted, and then we're going to have to ask the voters to create a new building reserve fund. Can't we just fund the existing building reserve?
The current, when we did the current reserve that's being depleted, it had a dollar cap and or a time limit.
Okay.
And we hit the cap.
Okay.
So usually we'll set it up to say $10 million or 10 or 15 years. Well, we didn't have to wait 10 or 15 years, but we hit the 10 million in deposits.
Okay.
We'll take that into account when we do, that's why I think the next reserve, if it's got to cover building, BCS, classroom changes, and electric bus infrastructure, it's going to need to be a bigger reserve for a longer period of time in case things don't work out. But you're always going to be capped on dollar limit or time limit.
Okay.
And we're, on the bus and the capital, we were maxed at one or the other.
Okay. And I do have one more question.
No, we'll go to Mr. Malone.
First of all, thank you for making us fiscally responsible. Second of all, our credit rating is AA3.
Correct.
Why doesn't that move to AA2 or a AA1? Because I know we're never late with a payment, and we haven't been for.
We have asked that question, and in order to get to a AA2, we need a lot more in reserve. Is really what they want.
So you're saying the reserves in the city and the county are that much better?
They know how we budget, they know how we manage, and we're conservative on things. But in their reports, they will say, here's the things that could make your credit rating go up, and here's things that could make your credit rating go down. And the big one that makes your credit rating go up is increased reserve funds. And on the other side, and we've had this discussion on our team a few times, I'm not even sure I want to go to AA2, even if we had it, because you'll get there for a minute, you'll come down before their threshold, and now it would look like a downgrade to the district from AA2 to AA3. I'd rather stay where we are and be stable and know that the credit rating, because whether you're AA2 or AA3, you're still very strong, you're still very good.
Yeah.
But it will appear to, you'll see a nice uptick for, we got upgraded to an AA2. And then 5 months later, we had to use the money to do our electric bus infrastructure work. We just now depleted one of the reserves, downgrade in place for.
Well, thank you for explaining that.
Any other questions? Ms. Lake?
So I took Romeo's college class in finance this year, and I've listened to your presentations for going on 3 years now, and I understood this one. So I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Mr. Butler?
So so you talked about maybe having to transfer up to $45 million out of the workers' comp and employee reserve funds. You mentioned that we feel like we're in a pretty good spot with most of our funds now. If we were to make that size transfer, would we be in a risky position, would you say? Or
For those other two?
For those other two funds?
I don't
We'd still be sufficiently funded?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
And I will say, when we started down this road, actually just before we knew what was coming in terms of the implementation of the formula. And we didn't know so much of how much grant money our team sat with our external auditors and like, how do we do that? We know we're going to have excess at the end of the year. What do we do and how do we mechanically make sure that we can move it around as we need? So we had that discussion several times, and then we've stayed to that plan, and that's why you've been seeing larger deposits to unemployment and workers' comp. If we put them in another reserve, even if there's no limit, it's restricted, and you can't move the money out of those reserves like you can with workers' comp and unemployment. So it's been intentional and strategic.
And I just have a question in regards to the reserve funds. We talk about the great unknown with the electric buses, the cost of the buses, we know, but we don't know what the infrastructure costs are going to be. What risk, I mean, obviously, we're going to need a significant amount of money to fund the buses and the infrastructure. What's the risk to the taxpayers depleting those reserves to fund the electric buses? Because the electric bus mandate, what's that going to look like for our taxpayers? And are we at risk of jeopardizing program, other things in the district by taking that reserve and having to dump it into the infrastructure for the electric buses?
So we have thought about that because once you move it into the reserve, that's a really restricted reserve. You can't get it out without using it for its intended purpose. So that's part of the reason we've been thinking about a capital reserve with a larger amount than just for the building, because then if we figure, two-part answer. So if we figured the building local share would be 25 and the infrastructure would be 20, if we did them in separate reserves and the one came in higher or lower than the other, we'd be stuck.
Gotcha.
But by putting them in one reserve, if the building reserve really needed 30, that only leaves us 15 for the bus infrastructure. That'd be fine because it's all coming out of one pot of money.
But I
It
guess,
gives us that flexibility. Now, putting the money in there that we may need for programs and operating budget, similar to the bus numbers, my gut says we've always been, I think the sweet spot for the reserves is probably $65, $70 million. Even by moving those funds out,
we're still okay.
we're still going to be fine with plenty funds to use in the operating budget if we need it.
And I mean, with the delay we're facing with the infrastructure costs coming back to the district, what is, in that you just explained, if we spend 25 on the capital and we have 15 for the infrastructure and the infrastructure comes in at 20, that would have to go to the taxpayers?
We would probably cut back the scope.
Okay.
So let's assume we said 25 for the building, 20 million for infrastructure for 20 buses. And then we budgeted, put money away in the bus reserve for 20 buses, but the building work came in at 30. Instead of 20 buses, we would just go 15
Okay.
as our first phase. And then we would figure it out what we're going to do going forward. So we had that flexibility to adjust either the reserve or the scope of work. But if we put them in separates, it becomes more difficult to manage.
Thank you. All right. Moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, 6.01, can I have somebody move the change orders to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Stetzel, second by Ms. Like. Any comments, questions, or concerns on the change orders? The only thing I will say is the change orders amount to $59,183. With that, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to 6.02, approval of the 24-25 property tax collection status. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Millar, second by Vice President Farmer. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes. Moving on to 6.03, the acceptance of the 23-24 internal audit risk assessment report. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Lake, seconded by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to 6.04, the seeker for the transportation warehouse renovation project. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Butler, second by Mr. Stencil. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all is in favor. That passes 9-0. Moving on to the capital project bond. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? 6.05. Moved by Mr. Bonnegorio, second by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all is in favor. That passes 9-0. Moving on to the discontinuation of standardization of interscholastic sports uniforms. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Vice President Farmer, second by Mr. Maloney. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Do you have a question? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Ms. Farah?
Just a quick question I had asked. I just kind of wanted to get an understanding, and those that don't really know what this was or what we're moving into, I just wanted a little understanding, and we talked about this, Superintendent Smalley. Could you just give a brief synopsis of what this would entail, or what's going to change?
So just a little history on that. Years ago, I don't have exactly the date, but years ago, there was some very clear inequity when it came to our uniforms across schools. And so at that point, some of the schools that didn't have the funds to purchase some nicer uniforms, what we did in the past was we standardized it so that it was equitable across the school, so that it was the same brand that they all used, and so that the same quality, same type of uniform. Since that time, we have corrected that inequity across the schools. And what the problem now is with the standardization is it limits the bidding. So now, when it's standardized, the bidding process now limits the competing companies putting forth their bid, so it lessens the variety of quality and the different organizations or companies that would put in that bid, that would allow for, I guess, more competition for that. So right now, it's limiting some of the schools that would like to go out and get a variety of offers, quality coming in. And so now, since it is equitable across the schools, removing that would allow for more competition, really.
Mr. Clay?
And I think the other thing it did is, in the past, whether we were buying baseball uniforms or football uniforms or lacrosse uniforms, because it was standardized, it all had to come from the same place. Well, now I think we like the football uniforms from this place, but the lacrosse uniforms are much better with another organization, but the standardization is limiting us from doing that. So the current bid put out specifications for all types, which now we've got a variety of firms, organizations that meet the specs, and we're not tied to one unit or one organization or one brand. For football, lacrosse, baseball, soccer, we have more flexibility, but the standard has already been risen per what Jeremy had said.
Good. It would be nice to get rid of those scratchy uniforms that we used to
Yes.
have back 20 years ago.
All right, any other questions? That, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to budget and revenue status report for October 31st, 2024. That's for information only. Does anybody have any questions? Moving on to 7.02, anticipated bids. Does anybody have any questions on that? It's written information only. All right, moving on to consent agenda. Can I have somebody move the consent agenda to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Stutzel, second by Mr. Maloney. Any comments, questions, concerns on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to 11.01, the certified capital project vote results. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Malor, seconded by Vice President Farmer. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all is in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to the regionalization resolution, be it resolved, Board of Education of Greece Central School District approves the district to participate in regionalization planning. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Vice President Farmer, seconded by Ms. Malor. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? Mr. Bonnegorio?
Thank you. I have quite a few concerns that I have conveyed to the board over the course of the past 2 or 3 months. I think I'll just give a short history of what we know, the State Education Department issued an emergency regulation, I believe it was in September, that was not, the emergency wasn't very well defined, citing basically the general welfare. But the impact of applying the rule as an emergency rule meant that the rule was implemented immediately, to be followed with some comment periods. The rule is in effect. It's been contested, and districts across New York State have raised a lot of concerns about it, partly about the vagueness of the rule. Well, maybe that's not correct. The rule is very direct in stating that there is a shift, there would be a shift of authority from the statutory authority of school boards under New York State law to the supervisory district authorities under the superintendent, the BOCES superintendent. And that's a significant shift that is of significant concern relating to local control of our individual, of our individual districts. There's been a lot of concern raised. Superintendents, our local superintendent, had a discussion through the Monroe County School Boards Association that he acknowledged, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty about what this really means. I know that's not what they really mean, but the problem is the language of the regulation departs from what everyone, including the Commissioner of Education and even the Governor of New York, say what it really means. The intent, they say, is to have a conversation, a voluntary conversation among our districts to find ways to rationalize resources. And yet the language is very, very clearly, you shall, the commissioner has discretion to impose unnamed criteria. So there are a lot of concerns that emanate from this. The idea, in my thinking, is really good as a voluntary participation. We do collaborate as districts across our region. That's a good thing. Collaboration, there's something Orwellian about the idea that voluntary collaboration is mandated, and that's what seems to be happening here. So I just want to begin this. We're going to consider this resolution to participate. I think we have to understand what we're getting into in the process.
Mr. Maloney?
This is actually for Mr. Bonadurio. Do you want to make an amendment to that resolution? I mean, do you want to accept the resolution with terms? I don't know how to put it, so.
I would like to hear what my board colleagues think about the issue as well. Ms. Lake?
Yes. Thanks. A couple of things going along with what Mark said. That emergency was issued in September and then reissued in November. And that emergency changes timelines. And these regulations, once the time passes, they have the force of law. They have not been legislated. They've been placed by unelected bureaucrats, and yet they have the force of law. I'm very concerned that we're talking about 37 regional districts in New York State. They're huge, they'll be huge. And yet one commissioner will have domain over that region. The big 5 cities are exempt from this. How does that work? how does this help with equity? Are the cities going to be divided now like a pie? There's nothing in the regulations that would prevent that. And they've had from September through the end of December to change the wording. If they say, well, that's not what we meant, well, then say what you mean, and yet they haven't. Why would that happen if they were sincere? And there have been a lot of people criticizing this, sending letters to them. And the other thing, it was mentioned that why are only a few districts involved in this Article 87 to place an injunction on this? 78. Because people don't know about it. It's not something that was widely publicized, unless you read the New York State Register. So those are just my comments I would add about this whole situation.
Any other board member comments? Ms. Farr?
I would have to go along with what Mark and Mary say. We spent probably last month a good hour talking regarding this before a board meeting. Several of us had many questions regarding what this actually meant and asking the director of superintendents what he was supposed to bring to the table and what we were really buying for this. There's a lot of questions that could not be answered. Money's involved. It's very concerning that in order to have a conversation, which this is what it is, you have to sign a resolution to continue a conversation. A conversation should not have to come with a mandate to participate when you should be just participating if you choose so. I don't think that this is a good idea.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Mr. Maloney?
I'm just afraid that if we're not at the table, we're going to have to sit back and take whatever they dish out. Am I understanding that correctly? If we vote no to this resolution and we opt out of it, we can't say a word. I mean, everything is going to come down. If it should pass, I just have some reservations. It's a trust issue. You say one thing and you write about something else, and that's a trust issue. And I have that trust issue. I don't have a trust issue with the 9 people on this board, but I have a trust issue with the state of New York. I'm sorry. And you're more than welcome to chime in anytime to.
You can do this one, Regent Hale. Do you have something you want to say before Regent Hale speaks or no?
Will I have the opportunity after he speaks? Or do you
Yeah,
want me to speak
no,
now?
we're going to have opportunity.
Oh, no,
Please, finish.
If you have a question or a comment, it might.
No question or
you can time
comment,
it.
but what I do want to say is I hear what you all are saying in terms of language. What I also heard tonight and what we saw in our board packet is that we have 4 teachers who are retiring at the end of this year. We're seeing a bubble where we're going to be losing more and more teachers. Resources, how are we going, and that's the part that I am focused on. How are we as individual districts going to be able to offer these beautiful opportunities that Shauna spoke about earlier and a million other things that we do in this district if we do continue to see not a decline, but a less people going into education, less teachers, less people wanting to be teachers. What will happen with our school districts? And I know people say that this isn't about resources, yet I saw a video of a person in Long Island saying that it is about resources, that it's their tax money, and they moved to that school district so they could educate their children in a way that they felt, they'd be spending all kinds of money on their taxes. So that's my point of view, and I'm looking at this farther down the road, not in a mistrustful way. And I hear you, Bill, but at the same time, we're in a position right now that I feel that I have to watch out for the children in our district as well as the children throughout our state.
Regent Hale?
That's everybody?
For now, there's probably gonna be more.
All right, so first off, for the record, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Regent Adrian Hale. I represent the 8 counties on the New York State Board of Regents and the 72 school districts included within them, including Greece, which is the second largest district within my district. Thank you so much, President McCabe and Vice President Farmer, for allowing me to speak to the board here. And I want you all to understand that I get your concerns. To your point, Vice President Farmer, the majority of the objections to this regionalization package is coming from downstate, Rockland, Westchester, Nassau, Suffolk counties, and it is about resources. But just to give you all a little bit of historical context, last year, we all sat and were a little bit taken aback when we saw the executive budget that was proposed, which will come out next week sometime, and it had threats to save harmless. Now, the great majority of kids outside of Big Five are in the rural and suburban districts that are already covered in these 37 supervisory districts or BOCES districts who are already cooperating to ensure that districts such as your own do not have to fully shoulder the burden of providing these services and programs to kids, given the differences in populations throughout these BOCES districts. To the Vice President's point, we want to make sure, and I'm not sure if you are all aware of this, but we asked the governor last year to give us just $1 million to do a study on what a foundation aid formula would look like to include Save Harmless, what it would look like if it was brought up to date, right? She gave that to the Rockefeller Institute, gave them $2 million. They just gave us a 314-page report that now she wants nothing to do with. We all can pretty much guess there's an election coming up and no one wants to touch this now. But to your point, Board Member Maloney, you have to be aware down the road that if threats to that funding does come back up and you play no role at the table, mind you, Greece is the largest district and Monroe too, then you would somewhat be subject to whatever other districts decided around metrics and contributions to the regionalization package that isn't being imposed. Just to be clear, the package that you mentioned, I don't want to butcher your last name. Mark, I don't want to butcher your last name, but that September regulation was modified by us in December to change the word compel to request and to deal with your concerns around trust, to even offer an opt-out option for districts that don't want to be involved. The reality is close to 80% of districts are already signing on to this resolution to be involved. The majority of the objection is coming from downstate, and it is about resources. But with lowering enrollment, there at some point is going to be a constructive conversation around funding that you all have to be aware of. And that's not us trying to impose ourselves as much as it's us saying districts have to collaborate and cooperate if we don't want to change offerings to students. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on, busing and all these other issues that I'm beyond supportive of you all on those issues. But you should be at the table to play a constructive role in deciding what this looks like. We haven't been trying to regulate from Albany as much as we're trying to hear from the field what actually works. And then the senior deputy commissioner who's overseeing the whole project, he's a DS. So he's overwhelmingly, he's sympathetic to these concerns and these reservations. And I hope you know the Board of Regents are as well. Any questions for me directly?
I have one, Regent
Please.
Hale. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Bonnegar, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Regent Hale. I would like to come back to your comment just now that some of the language was changed. I am aware that there was one item changed, and that was the requirement to participate in the planning process, and that was changed to voluntary participation, which in fact is what we're going to vote on here.
Correct.
I have consistently heard state officials say that, talk about this being a voluntary process. But the word compel, as it was stated with regards to the commissioner's ability to compel districts to abide by the plans, was not changed. There was talk about it, and that in the spirit of it, that is what is meant, and that will change, but as of yet, it has not been adopted. Am I accurate in that, or am I inaccurate?
Inaccurate, I guess you don't watch our meetings.
Okay.
So at our last meeting in December, we actually did change, and I could provide the superintendent and the president with the new language package that we were given at our last meeting that had that in it. We did change the word compelled to request, and then the opt-out provision was also put in there. And I think to also address your concern, Board Member Ferreira, or was it who talked about Big Five districts? So just to be clear, in that last updated package in December, Big Five districts are also invited to be a part of the process as well, and so are charter schools. Being that SED does have a portfolio of charter schools, locally we have about 12.
So my question, Regent Hale, is there was an amendment from SED December 2nd. The amendment basically does not mandate the regional reorganization such as mergers or consolidation, nor does it require districts to engage in specific activities under the regionalization plan. It establishes a voluntary framework for identifying opportunities to share resources, address common challenges, and improve student outcomes. Throughout the 60-day comment period, the department has engaged with stakeholders across the state and gathered feedback on the proposed amendment. The outreach reflects the department's commitment to ensuring all students have equitable access to high-quality educational opportunities while respecting the unique needs and priorities of local communities. Through the proposed amendment, school districts are invited to participate in their local regionalization conversations. In the final regionalization plan, participating school districts are only required to implement activities that they have agreed to or consented to for their local context. Did that amendment pass at your
Yes.
December meeting? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Butler?
I guess I would say that was my understanding as well. What you just shared was that it is voluntary participation, and I would much rather be at the table than not at the table to help shape. I mean, Greece being a large district, having the weight that we have of program, of experience, and of expertise on our staff, to have that be missing from the conversations, I think likely makes the result worse or weaker. And so I'm in support. I know you, Regent Hale. I know District Superintendent Putnam, who came and spoke with us. I know that that our local superintendent would prefer that we be at the table as well. And so, given my trust for those individuals, I'm in support of the resolution.
And just to exclamate that point, right, we're talking about the fourth largest district in upstate New York, right? You guys have a lot of expertise, a lot of insights, and I think you have a lot that other districts could learn from as a part of this process. But this is by no means trying to threaten local control. Just to be clear, we are only trying to ensure that districts are prepared for two things. The first is graduation measures, which you all know is coming, right? Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations. And also that if there is a serious threat to funding for students, that you still can provide the services and programs that you are now. I'm sure you all would hate to be here in a year when we have to wait for a new executive budget post an election, and there's real threats to funding that we know will probably be in there next week when we see this executive budget that's coming out during the State of the State.
Mr. Stetzel?
Thank you, Regent Hale, for coming and answering these questions. I think given, Mr. President, with the revelations that were brought here, it's kind of updated my thinking process about this as well. I was wondering, is there any way we could table the vote so we could have more discussion and learn about the new changes that have been made since our last meeting with Superintendent Putnam?
I believe the deadline is we must move forward by the January 15th.
Oh, my goodness.
That's why we're voting tonight, because it would be next Wednesday.
If I may, what I could do, because I let the commissioner know that I was going to come out here tonight, I could have her or the senior deputy commissioner who's overseeing the process schedule a meeting at a later date and really help you guys in a more detailed way understand the process for participatory reasons, right? Like, how can you get the most out of your participation within this process, if that would be sufficient?
We would still have to vote tonight to participate, and that would come after that we're in, we could have that further.
But I'm not hoodwinking or duping you.
I hope, Adrian. Mr. Bonagario.
Can you just tell me when did that vote take place? I think it was just before Christmas.
Nope, that was at our December meeting, our December board meeting.
When in December? Early, mid?
It's all public knowledge. Just like yours, it's public knowledge.
So, may I make
And it's on video, right? Our meetings are all recorded and archived on SED's website as well. So you'll see David Frank, who's like chief of staff to the commissioner, he's assistant commissioner, and then our senior deputy commissioner give us an updated brief themselves about changes in regulations after hearing feedback from the field. And I really want to make sure, Board Member Maloney, you understand that, right? That as we have solicited feedback from the educational ecosystem, we've made the necessary accommodations and amendments to the language so that folks understand on our end, right, on SED's end, we have the most noble of intentions, and we have to be prepared for, in Albany talk, what might come from across the street, right? That's what we want to make sure we're prepared for.
Thank you.
According to a quick Google search, it was December 9th. Thank you.
Mr. Montgomery?
I'd like to propose a 5-minute recess. Mr. Hale, Regent Hale has offered to share that information with us. I'd like to request a 5-minute recess to take him up on that offer, because I agree with my colleagues that it's really important for us to be at the table, but we need to do that with a sure understanding of what we're getting into.
All right, we can do a 5-minute recess with Regent Hale, and I'm just going to fire a shot at you, Regent Hale. I'd rather gouge my eyes out with a spoon than watch a Board of Regents meeting. And I'm sure you feel the same way about sitting through our meeting tonight. After our 5-minute recess, several of my colleagues had an opportunity to speak to Regent Hale. Again, thank you so much for Regent Hale for availing yourself to us this evening. Does anybody else have any questions or comments they would like to make? Mr. Bonnegorio.
I'd like to propose an amendment to the resolution stating essentially that we would join the planning process under the understanding that the changes that Regent Hale described to us are in fact in the regulation, and I think you have the language for that.
So I think the language is, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the final regionalization plan, participating school districts are only required to implement activities that they have agreed or consented to for their local context. All right, so there's an amendment to the resolution. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Stenzel. Is there any comments, questions, concerns, discussion on just the amendment?
So,
President Farmer.
oh, thank you, I forgot.
False start.
Yes. Okay, so this amendment, if we were to go through with this and say whatever happens, what happens then?
Can you, I mean, I'm not trying to be complicated here. I don't understand your question.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
I guess I'm a little confused by
So
your
say we
question.
vote yes to this, and the state, and the, nice it says, doesn't uphold what's in this paper. What happens next?
I mean, we're in the process, and, you know, I guess we really wouldn't have much of a leg to stand on at the end of the day if SED and, you know, Regent Hale, I mean, he's made it clear tonight that, you know, this is going to be an optional thing at the end of the day, and that's the board's position at this time. So, I mean, taking him for his word, I mean, I'm expecting this to follow through at the end, that this is a voluntary process. So I'm hoping that your question never comes to fruition.
Yeah.
I guess would be is that a correct assumption on my part, Regent Hale?
Correct, and it's like I was telling, board member Mark, right, I don't want to push you back. But, right, it would the only time you would see SED really engage is if another district or other districts within this BOCES district saw severe cuts to their budgets and could not provide those programs. And based on your participation in the planning process, you already committed to whatever, or certain metrics, or however you want to participate within this process. That would be it, and that's in the language, right? And you see it went from compelling to requesting, but who would allow kids within our own community to go without if they saw loss of dollars from a proposed budget from all, which is what this is all about.
Question on the amendment?
No.
Okay.
That's what we're considering.
We're working on the amendment right now. So we'll be back to the full resolution. Is there any other questions or comments just on the amendment? All those in favor, let's do this by roll call. Yep.
Mr. President, can you just reread the entire amendment?
So basically the amendment says, in the final regionalization plan, participating school districts are only required to implement activities that they have agreed or consented to for their local context. And that comes,
My apologies, can you read the entire resolution with the amendment?
so the entire resolution would be with the amendment included, if it gets adopted, that the Board of Education of Greece Central School District approves the district to participate in the regionalization planning. In the final regionalization plan, which this is the amendment, participating school districts are only required to implement activities that they have agreed or consented to for their local context. Good? Okay. Any other questions, comments just on the amendment? All right, we're going to do a roll call vote. We're going to start with Mr. Maloney. This is just on the amendment.
On the amendment, I vote yes.
Mr. Bonnegorio.
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Ms. Millar.
Yes.
Mr. Stetzel.
Yes.
Ms. Lake.
Yes, and nice job, board, working on this together.
Thanks.
Yes.
Ms. Farah. And Vice President Farmer.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes. The amendment's adopted unanimously. Now back to the full resolution. Any other comments, questions, or concerns on this? Ms. Farah, is this where your question comes in?
Sort of, maybe off topic here or close thereof. Does this have anything to do with maybe possibly the lack of federal funding that we may see, obviously?
Yep. Please, Regent Hale.
That is a major concern, right? And I don't know if you've seen this too, but the New York Post asked for the incoming administration to even investigate SED and the Board of Regents as well. So New York is already kind of being, I think, targeted. What we're potentially planning for is there could be everywhere from a hard repeal. So if you think about the U.S. Department of Education, that's Title IX, which is civil rights, that's Title I, that's IDEA, and then that's Pell Grants and whatnot. Hard repeal could be removing those programs, reallocating those dollars, and giving states a lot more discretion at how they use those. A soft one could potentially be reassigning IDEA and Title I to labor, reassigning Title IX to civil rights under Department of Justice, and the Pell Grants and college funding to Treasury, right? That could be a potentially soft one where they reallocate those programs, they still stay intact, but they're under different U.S. departments. That is how we're trying to anticipate this, but obviously with the incoming administration, we don't know what to expect, but we're trying to plan for that as well. The biggest ones that you probably would see is IDEA, which is special education, and the other one being obviously Title I, right? Those would be the big ones that you probably should be most concerned about. So yeah, that's how we're anticipating it. But right now, that's not so much a part of this as it is state funding, but just be aware that if we do see a decrease in federal dollars, then we're gonna go across the street to the state legislature and to the governor and make hardier asks, because we're not gonna wanna see students in New York State go without.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. On the resolution as amended, we're going to start. Yep.
Just a procedural question.
Sure.
I do have another proposal that I would like to make in this context, and we spoke about it during the recess. Is that an appropriate thing to bring up at this point or after the vote?
It would be after the vote. All right.
Yes?
Yes.
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 And I'm a yes, that passes unanimously. All right. Do you want to do it under your board member comments, or do you want to do it here?
Is it actionable under my board member comments?
I don't know if it's going to be actionable here, but we'll give it a shot. All right, I'll give you the courtesy. Go ahead, Mr. Bonagoro.
Thank you. And I also want to thank Regent Hill. And I do want to just say that I think we all understand this process is this collaborative process among school districts for the benefit of our students, our families, our teachers, everyone, our taxpayers, is really important. And yet, this concern about how this has all played out is also very important. There is a movement by a number of districts around New York State to file an Article 78 injunction against this regulation. And I'd like to propose that we join that filing in the sense that the voluntary participation in these efforts is critical. It's what has always sustained our work as a region with our BOCES partners, and I'd like to make a motion that we join that.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Stenzel. Is there any discussion on joining the Article 78 litigation?
Could I hear it again, please?
What do you want to hear, what the proposal is? That we join
Yeah.
the Article 78 injunction. It hasn't been filed yet. It is expected to be filed on,
So if they
The ninth.
file it, we would join it.
yes. But they're looking for people to participate to participate in it now.
Is there any comments, discussion? We'll go Mr. Maloney first.
Personally, I would like some legal counsel in this. I hate making these decisions within only a couple days left to make it. I would like to have our district's attorney sit and address us. I know there's probably not enough time. So I understand where you're coming from. I just don't know if I can support it or not without some legal counsel.
Mr. Butler?
Yeah, and I guess maybe I don't understand it well enough, and I would welcome some additional education on it, but if the concern and the reason for the potential legal action is because of compelling participation, and I think what we've just based our approval of this resolution on is the change to it not being compelled, but being voluntary, and anything that you might agree to implement would be voluntary. I guess I don't see the point in the legal action, unless there's something I'm misunderstanding about it.
Yep. He asked you. Yep.
So there is, as my colleague here, several of our colleagues have said, there's different perspectives on the language, and I haven't as yet seen the final actual regulation. And what is in the final regulation is really the critical piece. I don't expect that a filing would be made if, in fact, everything has been adjusted to voluntary participation. But if it is, if it has not been adjusted, then we're in a position to participate in a filing to protect our rights as a school board and a school district. So I agree that we should request our council's opinion on it, and maybe we can do that, hopefully in short order, in order to potentially participate.
Ms. Lake?
The other implication might be, Tad, that with the injunction, it would be more a localized thing as opposed to 37 pieces, New York State divided into 37 regions with one commissioner, overseeing each of them.
Anybody else have a question? Then I have a question for Regent Hale.
I don't have a question. Well, maybe it's a question, but my understanding when I was reading this is that our district would have to hire our own attorney. Is that correct?
No. The coalition districts who are filing the injunction have made their attorney available to any other districts who want to participate.
We have to pay them.
Yes.
Yeah, they would be sharing the cost, and it becomes, I don't remember what the amount was, but it was fairly small in the, yeah, less than we spent on anything else today. It's all subject to that, I suppose.
Right, there's
Yeah.
too many
Yeah.
open ends, right?
I think it was $6,000 with the number they had
Already, yeah.
last week or sometime.
So I guess my question, Regent Hale, to you is, has the Board of Regents, because my understanding of an Article 78 is that an Article 78 can't be, if you haven't, has the Board of Regents officially adopted the regionalization plan? Is it totally complete and
Yes.
adopted?
It's an emergency, just to be clear, it's an emergency regulation.
So it's been adopted, so an Article
Correct.
78 would apply?
It went into back in September, it immediately went into enactment.
Okay.
And then it was amended in December when we took that subsequent vote on amending languages and processes within that original emergency procedure.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a motion to table the Article 78 pending our attorney giving us an opinion on whether it behooves the Greece Central School District to participate in this Article 78 litigation or not. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Maloney, we should be getting a legal opinion. So I'm gonna make a motion to table. A motion to table is non-debatable. I need a second. Second by Mr. Stetzel. We'll do a roll call vote on a motion to table pending legal review. We'll start with Vice President Farmer. A yes vote is to table.
Yes.
Ms. Farah?
Yes.
Ms. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Stetzel?
Yes.
Ms. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Bonnegario?
Point of information?
Sure.
Did you say that you will be inquiring with counsel?
Yep, motion to table till it's reviewed by legal counsel.
Yes.
Mr. Maloney?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so it, issues tabled pending legal review by our attorney. So once I find out from her, I will let the board know. All right, moving on to 11.04. Our colleague, Ms. Lake, proposed a resolution tonight. Be it resolved that Degree Central School District joins as a member district in New York State School Boards Association. Any motion and a second? Moved by Ms. Farah, seconded by Mr. Stetzel. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Ms. Lake, I'm going to let Ms. Lake go since
Okay.
it's her resolution.
There were 3 reasons that I thought it would be in our best interest. One is that we would have legal representation with the state as a school board, separate from our representation with the district. Secondly, they have a department that can investigate things. So if we wanted an abstract of the Rockefeller study, we could request that of them. Or if we wanted to look up something that instructionally the district's been kind of working on, we could do that to push initiatives. And then thirdly, we could go to the conferences, New York State conferences, at a lower rate and be able to network with other school boards throughout the state. So those are my reasons to request joining.
All right. Mr. Maloney?
I guess I need to know the total cost of all this. I mean, it's fine to become there's a reason why we got out of New York State, and I think it was a
I got
cost
a whole
reason.
list of reasons. I'm going to tell you.
Okay, then I'll shut up.
Does anybody else have any comments? Ms. Malloy?
I'm also concerned about the cost. Do you have that number?
When he was here and when he met with us back in the fall, he quoted $12,000, but that was for the current year. The rates have went up, so I don't know the updated,
Got
but
it.
I know it went up. So it's a little more, probably a little more than the $12,000 annually. Any other questions?
Just all of us.
For the entire district. Any other comments? Mr. Stetzel?
Thank you. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. So I know that cost is a concern. I'm very fiscally conservative myself, but thinking about the things we just approved tonight in terms of cost, 12,000 is peanuts. And, thinking about it when I put on my academic cap, having more resources at our table and our disposal as a board is better than no resources. And I know that we have the county representation, but I'd like to see what the state has to offer. And I think I would be willing to say, can we do this in some sort of way where we preliminarily try it for 6 months or a year? And if we hate it and it sucks and we don't want it, we can always vote to get rid of it, right? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other board member comments?
I'm
Mr.
not opposed to exploring the idea. I guess I feel a little surprised by the resolution here tonight, and I would, especially since we not that long ago heard and had a discussion as a board and decided that we didn't want to pursue the New York State School Boards Association membership. We did, maybe it was before the two of you joined the board, but we had a presentation, a discussion about NISPA membership versus Monroe County School Boards Association membership and the benefits of each. And so I think if something has changed and we want to have that conversation again, I'd be fine with having that conversation. I just don't feel like I'd like to look at what the benefits are, ask some questions about do we have inadequate legal counsel at this point? Are there inadequate resources for conferences and so on at this point, as opposed to just, it's been suggested, so we have to do it or not do it? That's my opinion.
Ms. Farrar?
I just want to add comment. We did actually discuss this, it looks like in October of this past year. Now, we may have discussed this before you two got on board. We usually kind of discuss this every year. But it wasn't really that long ago. It was 2 months ago that we had our meeting with the New York State representative that came. And we spent an hour with them. We did actually ask a lot of questions. And at that point, it really wasn't discussed further. That's why the resolution is brought to the table regarding going forward with it. So a lot of us have discussed it. It looks like a lot of people have comments. They're pretty excited to go back to New York State to see what they have to offer. But we really did have that conversation, again, not that long ago. It was very long. It was great that the New York State representative, and I apologize, I don't remember his name at the top of my head.
Barry Erswistle.
Yes, thank you. But I thought he did a great job of what does offer, what New York State Board does offer. He went into extreme detail. I thought it was a very good presentation he offered.
Thank you. Mr. Bongario?
I would appreciate if the board president would share his
Oh, I'm
his
gonna.
thoughts. And maybe we can, you normally have the last word, but I was wondering if you could share those, and it may raise other questions.
Absolutely.
That's my point. Thank you.
So our Monroe County School Boards is a tremendous local resource. They provide above and beyond what the state provides. We've been members of the state association in the past. The state association when you pay $12,000 and your comment about like the legal, they bill you for all that. Anything that you ask them to do, you get a bill for. So you have access to it, but then there's a back charge. Like if you have them come in and do a board development, if you have them come in and do superintendent board relations, if you have them do any legal work for you, you get billed for that. It's not just a give me that they do you. So you end up being paid for it. You pay for that service through them. Having attended school board conferences, the last one that was in Rochester, I don't remember when that was, Terry. It was a total waste of time. And security measures, all their updated presentations, they were 5 to 7 years behind where we were in Greece. Their DEI was 5 to 7 years behind. They just talked about when Barry was here, oh my God, this new student board member thing, we did that a year ago, where we put a student board member. We've always been light years ahead of the state school boards. We created a policy to open up conferences and other things for board members to go to. I know Vice President Farmer's taking advantage. Board member Mallore's taking advantage of going to conferences outside of the school boards association. This trip to New York City is nice, and everybody wants to go to New York City, but you're not getting your bang for your buck. You might as well take the $13,000 and throw it in a parking lot for what you're going to get out of school boards. They were a total waste. They failed every school district in the state, and I know some of you are extremely passionate about COVID. They failed in their advocacy. They had a responsibility to advocate, and they didn't do anything during COVID. Nothing. They have taken no action on the electric bus issue. So for all this advocacy that you're getting from them, you might as well take your head and slam it into the wall, because there's nothing there. You're just throwing money away. This is ridiculous. I mean, we can have other conferences and have board members go to conferences. Each of us have the opportunity once in a 3-year period to basically attend any conference you want. If you want to go to New York State School Boards, you can go to the New York State School Boards. And we'll pay the little bit of difference, but the membership's not worth it. We're not getting anything out of it. There's a reason this board pulled out of it, and the reason was they failed us on multiple levels. They took no action. Their education and training was, we brought them in for, and I don't know if Bill or Terry remember this, we brought them in back with Barbara Dean. They came in and did a superintendent. We were having some issues before I was president with some of our colleagues on the board and the superintendent at the time, Barbara Dean Williams, and they came in and they made it 10 times worse. I mean, it turned into more of a fiasco, and it ended up costing us $9,000 to have them come in for 4 hours and do an evening session with us, with the superintendent. So at the end of the day, I think this is a terrible waste of money. We have a policy that we're going to have to revisit, because 2320, basically we fund policy 2320 with the money we had set aside for the School Boards Association. So now we're gonna have to figure out where that money is gonna come from. And every action we take with the school boards, there's a cost in addition to your dues. So I'm a hard no on this. I think it's a terrible waste of taxpayer dollars. Granted, I agree with Mr. Stetzel, $12,000 is a drop in a bucket in a $300 million budget. But I would rather spend that $12,000 someplace else. And I just don't think it's worth it. Well, no, it's not. It's gonna be more than $12,000, but the $12,000 is the figure that we were talking about, just for joining and being members. And you get a newspaper every, I don't remember what it was, once a month, you get a little newspaper from them highlighting what school districts are doing across the state, and you read everything in there, and we did it 3 years ago. So that's my position on the school boards. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Mr. Bonagorio. Microphone, please.
Thank you. Mr. Maloney and Mrs. Farmer both, I believe, have experience as well. Do you care to share your thoughts?
Yep, yep.
Okay. So I, too, was very, when we stopped being part of New York State School Boards, and we may have talked about this, I kept saying, listen, we need to be able to do this. We need to be able to interact with the different districts throughout the state, et cetera, et cetera. I will say, based on what I heard when Barry came and what Sean has said, and he said this in the past too, that it doesn't hold that promise that I once thought it did. And the idea that we can still go to this conference or other conferences is, I thought was a good match, compromise.
Ms. Moore.
So I did attend a few of their conferences, and the last one in Rochester was embarrassing because everything they talked about, literally, we were doing. We could take that $12,000 and send some of you to the convention, and you could see for yourself, as opposed to doing it. And they did always slap us with fees every time they came to talk to us. It was ridiculous. And we just decided it was just too much money.
Mr. Maloney.
I went to New York on my last conference that I went to, and I went with Mrs. Farmer, and I don't know if Terry was there or not. No, I guess not. And I did meet a lot of people from other districts, but I could do that normally. I don't even have to go all the way to New York City to meet these people. I could actually go to their districts. I was invited to some, and without the New York State School Boards. I went to some of their conferences, some of their talks, and it was like stuff that we had done 2 or 3 years ago, and it wasn't beneficial whatsoever. Not that I have a great time. I had a fantastic time. But other than that, I mean,
No stories, Mr. Maloney.
but as far as education-wise, it really wasn't all what it was cracked up to be.
Ms. Like.
Mark, when you talked to a lawyer through them, did you?
I did speak to someone, it was probably 2 years ago, and we were not members, and he answered some questions on a gratuitous basis.
Was it your understanding that we would have to pay for legal advice if they were?
I don't know.
Okay.
In the past, the legal advice, the issue is if you have your own legal counsel, they'll give you an opinion. If there's an opinion that's been litigated, if it's something that's happened, like if you're looking at a consolidation, if you're looking at things along those lines, merging schools, closing a school, they can give you an opinion on what's happened in the past. They're not doing new legal work for you. You have your district attorney that's gonna do that. So that's where their legal comes in. But again, if they spend the time with you, they charge you. I mean, they charge us, the 1 year we spent almost $40,000 on top of our dues in fees, bringing them in for a couple things. So, Mr. Stetzel.
This question's for, I guess, Mary and Mark and Megan. It sounds like, based on everything we've been talking about here, the real issue here is not really the association, but access to an attorney related to education. Am I wrong on this, or? Well, because it's been brought up a couple times, so I'm trying to tease out, is there something else we're really asking for?
I don't know.
I mean, I guess I'm going to comment, and I think if I understand, and please correct me if I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, what you're looking for, or what you're asking is there a way that all 9 board members can reach out to the attorney and ask questions?
Yes, in part. I know when you and I have spoke a long time ago, when we first talked at Dunkin' Donuts, you had said something about there used to be 2 different attorneys, one for the district, one for the board. I remember your reasoning for why you squashed it, but, you know, why couldn't we entertain that, having our own board dedicated attorney, and then one for the district? This way, there's no conflict of interest. We can have open, honest discussions with this individual.
Well, there is 100% a conflict of interest when you get 2 different decisions. When the school district's attorney makes one decision and the board's attorney tells them something differently.
Respectfully, Mr. President, I would just say the law is the law, right? The lawyers should all come to the same conclusion based on what the courts have decided and whatnot. There shouldn't be these.
Mr. Stetzel, I mean, I'm going to try to be sensitive here, but I think I'm not going to be very sensitive in regards to the fact that when you pay an attorney, the attorney works for you and wants to, he's going to
I
work
understand
to get
that.
you the decision you want him to get to. If I call an attorney tomorrow and tell him I want the sky to be purple, he's going to do everything in his power to make the sky purple in my world.
I understand that.
You know, so I mean, again, attorneys, I mean, they have to work, they litigate, they do billable hours. That's what their goal is. I mean, I think it would be absolutely crazy, and even when the board did have 2 attorneys, or when the district had 2 separate attorneys that you're referencing in the early 2000s, it led to constant conflict, and the board members still didn't have access to the attorney. Everything went through the president. If you have 9 people calling the attorney, I mean, I would sign up tomorrow to be the district's attorney, because I'd be like, oh, hey, Jordan, what's going on? I'd be whacking, cha-ching, cha-ching, oh, Terry, how are you? So every phone call, you're getting whacked. I mean, I don't know if you look at legal bills, but I mean, they nickel and dime everything. Nothing against attorneys.
Sure.
I love them. That's their job. They got a job to do like everybody else in the world, but that's their position. And I don't think it behooves the district. I think as soon as you look at hiring a board attorney that's different than the district's attorney, you're establishing an adversarial relationship between the Board of Education and the school district that they're representing. If you have a reason to hire an attorney for a separate issue, if you are going to, like we have attorneys that do some of our real estate work, we have attorneys that have represented us in other issues, that you go out and you look for an attorney to represent you in those issues, and potentially you could do that. We could put, if we had a concern with something and wanted to have a outside legal counsel look at something, the board can make that decision to do that. But at the end of the day, that's not where, it doesn't behoove the school district. I mean, and we're so far off the resolution at this point, I think it's, you know, yeah. Mr. Bonagario?
I'd like to move that we table the motion for now, and perhaps Mr. Stenzel can do some additional research on it. If he chooses to.
No need. I'm good.
So,
Resolution's been tabled.
wait, I guess I'm confused. What's tabled, I guess, here?
I'm proposing tabling
The school board's resolution?
the resolution that Mr.
He didn't make a
Stenzel-
resolution. He
Oh,
was
you
just-
didn't?
He was asking a question.
Oh, I'm
and a
sorry.
discussion.
Mrs.
It was more of a
Light did.
comment and discussion.
Oh,
Correct.
I thought it was a resolution.
Okay. Yeah, we were,
Okay, thank you.
Mary's got the resolution. All right, so getting back to the main resolution, on joining the New York State School Boards or not. Is there any more discussion on that? I think we've beaten this horse to death. Anything else? All right, we're gonna do a roll call vote on this one. Vice President Farmer. Oh,
I'd like to table it for the time being.
so you're making a motion
Yes.
to when? I mean, usually a motion, okay. So there's a motion with table, the New York State School Board's discussion indefinitely. It's a non-debatable motion. Is there a second? Mr. Bonagario, all those in favor of motion to table? That passes 8-1. I'm a no. All right, moving on. Board member comments. Who wants to go?
I'll go first.
All right.
Happy New Year, everybody.
You guys loved this first meeting, didn't you?
Look at how tired they all look. Real quick,
Signed up for this, buddy.
real quick, I want to remind families that coming out, we have a winter perception survey to understand how families feel about our work. It's going to be coming out. Please, please, everybody, let us know how you feel. I also want to remind everybody, we have lots of sports going on, and it's a great opportunity, especially to bring some young ones to see a basketball game. It's great entertainment, and it's musical season, and I will be singing the next few months some of the songs from the musicals. Have a good night.
Other board member comment, Mr. Maloney.
I've got three.
All right.
One, Mr. Smalley, thank you very much for being our superintendent. And your staff, the new staff and the old staff, thank you very much. Second of all, I don't need an attorney. I work with the smartest people that there ever was. This board is unbelievable. And if I have any questions, I ain't afraid to ask any one of them. And it doesn't cost me anything. But that's all I've got for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Mr. Butler.
I want to add my congratulations to Superintendent Smalley, to Assistant Superintendents Baker and Flagler, and Deputy Superintendent Fleming for your new roles. Congratulations. This is an exciting time for this district, and we are in good hands with the leadership team that we've got here. So congratulations to all of you, and I really look forward to partnering with you for the over the next period of time. I want to recognize the passing of President Carter, who was eulogized today. I was listening on my way here to some of those, and he sets an extraordinary example of selflessness and commitment to values and community service that I think we could all live by, and so I didn't want the meeting to go by without mentioning that. And I also want to congratulate this board for wrestling with some tough stuff tonight, and I think we did it in a spirit of collegiality and teamwork that bodes well for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Farah.
Just quickly, I do want to thank our resident speaker, Mr. Smith. First off, I want to thank you for your service. I know that they all left. Thank you for speaking on the veterans tax exemption that we are looking into. I also want to thank the retirees. There were a lot of them, some board packets. There seems to be a lot to a little. So I won't go through all the names, but I am sad to see a few of our Longridge teachers. They are leaving. Bummer. Also, Mr. Smalling, Superintendent Smalling, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. So when I first asked you if you were up to being the superintendent, I thought you were crazy. You still may be, but that's up to interpretation yet. I look forward to you bringing the trust and the transparency to the table, and I would like to go with Mr. Butler's comments. I think we did a great job today. I think the transparency is definitely working with the conversations. We kept her cool, all of us, and I think that was a great rendition of what we will see coming 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farah. Ms. Lake?
I repeat what everyone said about the welcoming new people to the district and the table. And Lori, congratulations, and it's nice to have you here. Big shoes to fill, but you're doing a great job so far.
Anybody else? Mr. Monagario?
I do want to add my congratulations to Superintendent Smalley, and I look forward to working with you and the rest of the staff, new and old. And I will echo Mr. Butler's comments. And as you know, a lot of people have asked me, you know, how do you like being on the board? And a common response is, they're all good people. And we might not all agree on everything, but we get along. And it's, you know, we haven't seen that all over the country, but I think we do see it here, and that's nice. And a Happy New Year to all of you and to all of our families in the Greece community. Thanks.
Vice President Farmer?
Okay. Everybody said welcome, congratulations to all of you who are new to us this year. Romeo, with your expertise and your team, how you continue to hold us up in ways that allow us to do these wonderful programs that Shauna was talking to us about. I attended the, one of the evening events with the Spanish parents, and it was just so beautiful to see people talking with each other, engaging in the kids. And then I was asked if I spoke Spanish, and I said, oh, un poco, and they were, oh, you know, excited that I could even just speak a little bit. So I could just more and more and more. Is that there? I think I lost my, so I said, oh, Happy New Year, Happy New Year.
Thank you, Vice President Farmer. I'm just going to be brief. We have a legislative breakfast next month. Regent Hale made a comment today about advocacy. Advocacy is going to be very important at the state level when it comes to foundation aid and the state aid, especially after we see the executive's budget coming out next week, I believe it is, right, Romeo, next week?
State is the 14th.
14th, yeah, so next week. So her budget will be out next week, so it'll be interesting to see. So advocacy on that and some of the state laws, especially this electric bus thing. So advocacy, and then we got a lot of budget work to do for this Greece Central School District, so it's gonna be a busy, between now and the end of the year, a lot to do. It's gonna fly by, and thank you, everybody. It was a good meeting tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
Superintendent Smalley?
All right. I also want to thank everybody for our work tonight. We wrestled some difficult issues, and I think we did a great job coming together, and I appreciate that, especially at my first board meeting, so thank you for that. I also wanted to take a moment to extend my deepest gratitude to the veterans who joined us earlier today and thank them for their service. And I'll just end with, you know, as I step into this role as your superintendent, I wanted to begin by expressing my gratitude for the trust and support I received just throughout this entire transition. Thank you for welcoming me into this role and for your ongoing dedication to our schools. And I'm excited for what lies ahead and confident that together we will continue to inspire excellence and create opportunities for every student in the Greece Central School District. So thank you very much for your support. I'm looking forward to our time together.
Thank you, Superintendent Smalley. Mr. Maloney?
Yes, I'd like to make a resolution that we adjourn this meeting.
I imagine you would. Is there a second? Mr. Butler gets the second. All those in favor?
Yay.
And just so everybody knows, our next meeting, we're gonna run till 10. So everybody buckle in, we're going till 10.
My alarm goes off. You guys got